Welcome to the Authority Journey podcast. Achieving your most audacious goals doesn't happen by accident. Explore the authority journey and what it takes to influence, lead, and succeed. My name is Catherine Aragon, and I am honored to have David Perez with us today. David is a podcasting expert, podcast producer, and coach. He's the host of the Audience Coach podcast and founder of Talking Silkworm, which is a podcast production agency that focuses on helping health and wellness coaches set up and launch their podcast. Thank you for joining us, David.
Okay, Catherine, thank you very much for having me. Okay, well, about myself, I'm a podcast producer and editor, and my job is mainly helping coaches, life coaches, health and wellness coaches, set up, start, and run their podcasts so they can increase their online presence and, of course, grow an audience, which is the ultimate goal of creating a podcast.
Okay.
My background is not in podcasting, actually, is in education. I used to be a teacher, was a teacher for 8 years. But part of that time, I was an online teacher. So what I did is, as part of my teaching process as an online tutor, I started to create podcasts for my students, and eventually I started to create podcasts for businesses. So that's why I ended up as a podcast producer.
Wow, that is really interesting. So how many podcasts have you actually put together?
Okay, in terms of the number of shows, I think I've lost the count, like over 60 or 70, I guess.
Nice.
Because like they come and go. It depends also on the creator, because sometimes they prefer to stop the project after some time or just stay. Like it depends on the project. But I think in podcast episodes, I think over 1,000.
Wow.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is amazing. So it's interesting that you started out just in education and you morphed into business. Did
Mhm.
you anticipate did you ever dream you would be doing what you're doing now?
I absolutely didn't. I never dreamed I will be having such a strong, apparently such a strong change. But actually, there are a lot of things I learned in education that I now apply in my business. There are, like, for example, part of it is the concept of authority, ordering, like being an author, creating content, creating audiences. That was something I used to study for example, in my English subjects. And
Mhm.
also the part of teaching people staff is pretty much what you do when you create content. You are teaching somebody to do something so they can move forward or they can feel inspired to take action.
Very good. So podcasts are, I love podcasts because it's another iteration of content marketing, just another
Yes.
channel where you can share your message and reach your audience. But why do you see them as a good medium for any business?
Okay. Having podcast, I mean, if podcast can be a good medium depending on what your purpose is, that's going to be the first thing. So it will depend on what kind of business you're in and what your content strategy objectives are. So podcast is a great medium for creating deep connections with an audience. Okay, if you're gonna go with video, I mean, usually video has like a very short attention span, which is around like 3 to 5 minutes. But with podcasting, you can have a person hooked up to the content somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes or even longer than that. I've seen podcast episodes go around 3 hours in length, and people will get to listen to the whole piece. So the strength of podcasting is the strong engagement you will be able to generate in your audience.
Very good. Um, So, do you see a podcast like actually impacting a business's relationship with their audience?
Yes, actually, I have had interviews or I have spoken with some of the clients I work with who have large audiences on different platforms. Some of them, one of them has like around 400,000 followers on Instagram, for example. And when I chatted with her, she told me like the platform that has created the biggest connection with her audience hasn't been Instagram, but it has been her podcast because these are very personal conversations that create very deep connections in people who listen to them. So yes, she has gotten all this feedback from her audience telling her like, thank you so much, your podcast episode has helped me a lot. The latest episode helped me out with this issue or this problem I had, and now I'm moving forward in order to fix that problem.
So I like what you're saying about it helps you build a connection, I believe, with your
Yes,
audience. So
absolutely.
how do you teach people how to do that?
uh it's something about the personality. It's very complicated to teach someone to do it. Is more of allowing yourself to be yourself in front of a microphone, because there are so many factors that get in the way. We have well, as we might know, like imposter syndrome is a very common factor. The fear of public speaking is also a factor, although we are not in front of a crowd or in front of a public, okay, in an auditorium. We know what we are recording right now is going to be out there and people are going to listen. So, like that fear of judgment. So, it's usually not teaching them, but just help them lose the fear of making mistakes, because actually making mistakes is a necessary part of the process. You need to you need to sound bad at the beginning. You need to, yeah, I don't know, sound crappy, record an episode that doesn't have a clear focus. But from that, eventually you're going to end up improving your skill, narrowing the focus of your topics, improving the structure of the show, and uh, creating a better piece of content over time. But that's the main thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
How long do you see typically when you're working with someone? How long does it take them to begin to get comfortable with the process to where they understand, yes, I'm going to make mistakes and that's okay?
Mhm. Okay, that's very related to personality, but usually it's within the first month.
Really? That
Yes,
quickly?
yes, not because in the first month we're gonna be releasing new episodes, but I what I asked them is to do a huge batch of recordings before we actually launch the show. So in the first month, like a new podcaster should have at least 8 to 10 recordings. So that should be something in a mix of interviews and solo episodes, and that should give them the practice and confidence to move forward from then on.
So during that month, are there some of those recordings that get thrown out?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Like sometimes I we give them feedback. It's very important to give them feedback. We tell them, okay, this is how you can improve. What you one common mistake, I think the most common mistake is topics that don't have a clear focus, or content that doesn't have a clear focus. So they are all over the place. They don't speak about anything in specific. So if you want to figure out what the central or the main idea of the episode was, there is no way to do it because it's just jumping around. So that's a very common thing, and you can always re-record. You can always re-record and redo things. And there is a moment where you don't have to do retakes or re-recordings. It just flows naturally, and you don't have to make the process like heavy on your shoulders. It becomes like super light after you have the skills and the practice.
I like that. Do you recommend people write out a script or to just have talking points and riff, be themselves?
Okay, from my experience, we started out with scripts. Scripts might be useful if it's gonna be a short episode.
Okay.
Okay, if this is gonna be a short episode. For longer episodes, like by longer I mean 20 minutes or longer, or even for shorter ones, I always do bullet points because we want to have a very simplified process for recording and publishing the episodes. And if you need to take the time to write down and polish a script, it's gonna take you a lot of time. And I don't know, like in my case, I am kind of obsessive when I'm writing, so I am a perfectionist with my writing, so that takes me a lot of time, and then I need to transfer that into spoken word, and then that needs to be processed. So the lighter the process can be, the better. Eventually I just discarded scripts, and I just do like I create bullet points with the main ideas and go with it.
That has worked really well for me as well. I'm going to, back, I don't know, 5 years ago when I would do video recordings, I would write
Yes.
out the script. I think I was afraid I would forget the right word. I wouldn't sound intelligent or whatever. Now it's almost like I feel like there's less energy if I've written a script. All the energy went
Mm-hmm.
into the script, it doesn't go into the recording.
Yes.
Whereas if I just give myself bullet points, I feel like I'm more myself and there's more energy in my voice. Have you observed that?
Absolutely. One of the processes we have had lately in the show, in our show, in my podcast show, the audience coach, is we integrated a co-host. So bullet points allow us to be a lot more flexible in the conversation. So it sounds like a conversation, not like I'm reading a script. And sometimes we go a bit off topic. We can speak about, okay, it's very hot out there, or like my co-host is attending university, so okay, how is university going? Like we can make it more personal, show a little bit about our personalities or ourselves or about our life stories, and also cover the topic. So that gives us a lot of room to express our personalities and still cover the topic.
So now let's back up and go more to podcasting as a form of, as a medium for a business to,
Yes.
integrate into their content strategy.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing a podcast. Is there
Yes.
really room for another one? And if so, how do you stand out?
Okay. This is a common question, and it depends. Like if everybody is creating a podcast, but how long are people working on their podcast? That's, for example, one my nice question. Some people quit after a couple of months, or after 3-4 months, because they don't get results. So podcasting, just like any other type of content strategy you use, whether it's blogging or video, it takes a long time to yield results. Okay, it takes a long time to yield results. So usually, is the one who stands the longest who gets to see the results. Usually, after a long period of time, you will see competition dwindles. Okay, there are fewer competitors, and you'll get to see the fruits of what you've worked on.
Now, when you say long time,
Yes.
are we talking months, years? What are we looking at?
Yes, usually, and I base this on Content Inc. by Joe Pulizzi. He mentions in order for you to start seeing results, you need somewhere between 9 to 12 months
Okay.
of constant work. Okay. And so that clashes a little bit with our social media world mindset. Like everything has to be instant, it has to happen immediately. So I'm posting a new podcast episode, and I'm gonna see results tomorrow, and I'm gonna be selling my programs and courses after a few weeks. And no, that's not how it works. It takes a long time. This takes a long time, and during that time, you not only need to be consistent with the content you're publishing, but you also need to be constantly adjusting your strategy and listening. And this is very important because podcasting, as well as any other type of content strategy you have, is mostly a listening exercise. You need to listen to your audience and get constantly that feedback from your audience so you can understand better what they need, what they want, and what they want to achieve.
Now, tell me more about that. Where do you find this feedback? Let's say it's a new podcast and you're not getting a lot of engagement. Where do you
Mhm.
find that feedback?
Okay. Actually, that's pretty easy. There are several strategies we use. One of them is just taking note of all the common questions, misconceptions, and friction points when we are onboarding new clients or potential clients. Okay, so we take note of all that. That's one way we do it. And the other way we do it is we go on social media or YouTube, and we find creators that are producing content around similar topics, and we observe all the comments. Okay, it's what we call listening posts. I don't know if that has another name. Just call them listening posts. So we go there and we check all the comments and questions people have, which are usually hundreds and thousands. So the creator doesn't have the capacity to pay attention to all that and to reply to all of the comments. But there you're gonna find a lot of questions, a lot of struggles, and a lot of people and a lot of things people are sharing there, like from the very personal experience. So we get all that information from there. We pass that onto a spreadsheet, and usually we find there are a lot of patterns even if we have gone across like different pieces of content in the comments, there are patterns, and we start creating new content ideas from that information. So it doesn't have to be like direct feedback from people to you, but feedback from people to other people or to other content creators in your industry.
Okay, that's valid. Now, let's talk about time, because isn't that what
Yes.
holds us all back? If you're
Yeah,
already
absolutely.
doing social media and a blog, where do you find time to do the podcast? How do you fit that into the schedule?
Okay. Uh, this is a common issue with business owners, and it is we want to do it all ourselves because we are afraid if I don't if I don't do it myself and I do it very well, so no one is going to be able to give the results I give. So it's a matter of letting go and creating. I think in one of your podcast episodes you cover also the area of systems. Systems are essential, and you need to create systems around your podcast so you can eventually delegate. You need to delegate and transfer that responsibility onto somebody else in your team, or you can also hire a third party contractor to help you with the podcast, but you need to create the systems around it. Okay. So that's one way to have more time for that. The other is to create time blocks for recording, and that's what I do with my co-host. So we can sit down, and in a Saturday morning we record. It can be like 1 month or 2 months worth of content. Like you don't, it doesn't have to
Wonderful.
be, yeah, it doesn't have to be heavy on your schedule. You just block a time. If you're gonna be doing interviews, so just separate like a single morning in a month, and you can do 3, 4, 5 interviews in that single mornings. It's gonna be, that's gonna be probably 6 weeks worth of content, or 5 weeks worth of content.
Very good.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's mainly. And the other thing is try to keep it simple, because some people want to do the podcast, but they also want to do a multi-camera video podcast while they're doing the other thing, and they want to generate a infographic, and they want to do so many things at the same time. And it's important to just focus in one thing at a time, master that one thing, and once you've mastered it and once you've created a system around it, then you can add the camera or add a second camera or go to a studio or do whatever else you want to do. But it's important to keep it as simple as you can.
I love that. That's actually always been my approach to any new thing. Just add that one thing, keep it as simple as possible, figure out the system around it, and then it little by little it integrates and it becomes part of the big picture that way. But I love your point about not trying to do too much at once, especially
Yes.
with a medium that it feels overwhelming, I think, when you're
Yeah.
first starting out, because like you were talking about earlier, you've got that microphone, you've got the camera, you've got all this stuff, you've got lights in your face, and it just feels so foreign.
Yeah.
What do you tell people when they have that? It just they feel overwhelmed. Maybe they're having a little meltdown and they're ready to quit. What do you tell people?
They usually only listen once they have gone through the whole painful experience. I tell them in advance, don't do that because you are going to eventually burn out. So they go through the whole thing, because I mean, just recording with a single microphone can generate technical difficulties. Now imagine having multiple microphones and multiple cameras is going to be very, very exhausting. So I just tell them, keep it as simple as you can, because we don't want to focus on generating a lot of content in a lot of different formats. We want to focus on one content type, and create the largest impact we can create with that content type. Like not be just spread all around, but be laser focused in create an impact in an area we want to create an impact. So eventually, after that has happened, because like people tend to see content on social media, and usually what they see is the most popular creators, but what happens is these creators, one, have a lot of experience, and two, have a lot of money and a large, like a huge team. They have a huge team that works with them. So if you don't have a huge budget, like a six-figure budget a year for that, and a huge team, so stay laser focused and just focus on one content type for the moment.
Excellent advice. Now, let's talk about you. Okay.
Yes.
This is the Authority Journey podcast. And so I want to know a little bit more about your authority journey, like from where you started to where you are now.
Yes.
Um, you told us already you started as a teacher and that you really never expected you would get to where you are right now. If you had to go back and change change everything, what would you do differently?
I have asked myself that question several times, and I say I will change nothing. There is nothing I
That's
will change.
great to hear.
Absolutely. Uh, for example, teaching has given me a lot of tools and a lot of knowledge I am now applying into business. Like, for example, I like content marketing and I focus a lot on content marketing. And it's amazing to see how much of that information you have in content marketing you can have in the core syllabus of an English class, because there you're going to be talking just the same thing, other authority, audience, the message, how you want to convey the message, how you structure an idea, how you get the engagement from your audience. So like there are so many things that are so similar. And also in the practice, like the way you get to talk to people and the way you understand, for example, as a teacher, I understood that it's not just about delivering a message or not just giving them information or not just helping my students develop a skill, but also creating that connection, that trust. Because I mean, it might look like you know a lot and you can look like an authority to them, but if they don't trust you, if they don't connect with you, it's very hard for you to keep students engaged for a whole semester.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
so
makes
like a
perfect
lot of
sense.
these skills, yes, and that's one thing. I think one like the key point that, like in a nutshell, and this is something I also learned as a teacher, is skills are transferable. Skills are transferable. So I was an English teacher, for example. If you are good at writing in Spanish, you're gonna also be good at writing in English. Like structuring a text is gonna be easy, no matter the language you're using. That expands to every other single skill you have out there.
So, what goals are you working on now?
Okay, right now we are working on in my business. You asked, right?
Hmm.
Okay, we are trying to expand from podcast production, which is what we do right now, onto also creating courses around podcast recording and podcast strategy. Because like throughout our journey, we notice that there are still so many areas that we need to cover, but sometimes we don't have the capacity or the time to cover. So we are creating courses to help our clients and other people who need that to fill those gaps.
So, if somebody's interested in learning more about that, where should they go?
They should go to audiencecoach.com/contact, and they will just they can send me a line, a short message, and tell me about what they need. Because the courses are not live yet. We are working on them, and hopefully in a couple of months, because we are in the recording stage and the editing stage, they'll be live, and yeah, they'll be
Oh,
out there.
well, you evidently know what you're doing. So, I'm sure those will be really valuable. And I encourage all our listeners to go and visit. Give us that link one more time.
That is audiencecoach.com/contact. You can find me there, or you can also send me an email at david@audiencecoach.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today, David. It's been a pleasure chatting.
It's been my pleasure as well, Catherine. Thank you very much.